This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. As always, we appreciate you joining us. This week in the Arkansas legislature, 10 Republican state senators successfully blocked the funding bill for the state's Medicaid Services Division that included funding for Arkansas Works, the governor's Medicaid expansion program that alters the private option. That led to a plan to defund the program in a budget bill with the promise that Governor Asa Hutchinson would line item veto the measure if it made it to his desk. In short, a vote against Arkansas Works would become a vote for Arkansas Works. And at the end of the day, it was all very confusing, and the funding bill is still stuck in its original form in the Joint Budget Committee. Lawmakers will reconvene next week to hash it all out again. Joining me to talk politics this week is Michael John Gray. He is the House Minority Leader, Democrat from Augusta, Woodruff County, Arkansas, and Senator Alan Clark, Republican from Lonsdale, one of the 10 senators who opposed that governor's plan, Garland County, Lonsdale. Got to let everybody know where our geography is on this. Welcome to the program, gentlemen, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Robbie. Good to be here today.
I hope that was a somewhat accurate description of the chaos and the confusion that was there. Senator Clark, let's start with you. You have said you're basically an immovable object on the Arkansas Works funding plan here. Adds too much to the national debt, unsustainable program for Arkansas to carry. Is there anything that could move your position, change your position on this?
We're so far down this road. I mean, you've mentioned two things. Beyond that, we've taken a broken program, Medicaid, which we said in 2013. And we said it's a bad idea to expand a broken program. We've made it even worse. When the Stevens Group reported back in July, we had 42,000 people out of state. Now, we had predicted there'd be people out of state, but 42,000. $600 million a year just that we're paying for those folks that are probably getting no benefits from it. Another 100,000 that are not employed at all. And it's just, the program itself is a mess, but besides the other problems with it.
Do you have a plan for plugging the holes in the budget gap that the governor contends would be there, this $143 million hole? Where does that money come from if Arkansas Works is not funded?
It's fit more for a newspaper than TV, but first of all, you know, only in politics do you raise a budget by $150 million. If you were to cut it by 100, if it had to be cut by 100, you still have a $50 million increase, and we talk about plugging the holes. That's the first thing. Second of all, they've only got the private option itself in the budget for not at all, when in fact it would be in for 6 months, so you can cut that amount by half to start with. Sat down with John Stevens of the Stevens Group March 28th, and he said that whether we did managed care, whether we did diamond care, whatever we do, that there's easily $300 million in waste, more than that, but easily $300 million in waste and costs that we're paying too much for that can be cut from that budget. Our share of that's 30%. So we would save $90 million. Now, in fairness, it would take 2 years to start achieving those savings. But so at the most, even with that, we would have a cash flow problem, not a budget problem. And we can go, there's several more reasons why that's not the case.
All right, Representative Gray, does this math add up?
Well, I think the funny thing about math is, as a farmer who has to get a crop loan every once in a while, you can take a pencil and you can whip a spreadsheet with the best of them. But I think at the end of the day, there's something at larger stake here than just math. We're talking about 267,000 Arkansans who have health insurance that have never had it before, hospitals and communities who are now surviving because their hospitals are not drowning in debt, factories and industries that are able to stay in communities or come to communities because these communities do have hospitals or they do have a healthy workforce. So we can, at the end of the day, 4 plus 4 equals 8, but I'm going to trust the governor's math, leadership's math, and say that there are a lot bigger things at stake here.
There's bigger ramifications than just the numbers in the budget, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Democrats had a chance to vote on a budget bill in the Joint Budget Committee on Thursday that would have basically kind of endorsed this plan that has been run out there to vote against Arkansas Works funding in order for the governor to line item veto it in order for it to actually be funded. If that's the only path that's possible, do you see Democrats getting on board with that plan?
So what I see Democrats doing is what we always do, and that's taking a step back, taking the responsible position, asking the reasonable questions, having some conversation, and saying, what's the best way to get to this? If that's ultimately the only way, then those are some really hard questions that we'll have to answer. But The difference you have here is there are not 10 Democrats saying we're immovable objects and adamant. We're saying we're willing to listen, our minds aren't made of concrete, to quote a Senate colleague, and we want the end result. We want to see expansion continue in Arkansas.
If a budget bill comes to the Senate floor, Senator Clark, without Arkansas Works funding, if it's able to get out of this joint budget committee, are you going to vote against that bill, or are you going to vote for that bill?
If we had a true, clean bill without Arkansas Works in it, you know, not a possibly unconstitutional, writing it in so that the governor can veto it out, I'd absolutely vote for it. That's exactly, absolutely what we're looking for.
What are you going to do if you get a bill that does have that special language in it that the governor wants to line item veto? How are you going to vote?
You know, I'd call for the governor not to do that. I'll probably vote present because it's what I want, but it's not. But it's designed to make the opposite of that happen. So, and I really looking right now at asking the Attorney General for an opinion on that, because I don't see any way that you can, the line, it's never been done. And I think there are at least a couple of opinions that go just the opposite of that this can actually be done.
You're going to whip votes for that if that's the alternative?
I think what we'd love to see is we can bring Senator Clark a bill. They've seen one that has no constitutional ramifications, and vote for that one. And I'm pretty sure he represents an area that has a high number of recipients of the private option. I do know in this alternative budget we've seen education cuts. In Senator Clark's district, there are upwards of 100 of the National Board Certified Teachers whose program's going to cut. By my math, that's going to affect some 10,000 to 15,000 families in his district. So before we start talking about whipping votes for an alternative plan, I still think there's maybe time for, I give these guys credit to maybe consider the effects in their districts by not continuing.
All right, 15 seconds apiece here. Give me a prediction for what happens next week.
What happens next week? I can't predict the future.
No prediction. You got a prediction for next week?
Best prediction I can give you is that we're going to continue to have conversations with the governor's office and with leadership, find a reasonable solution. I think a reasonable solution can be found, and move forward with the budget. I think we can come to a resolution this week.
I'm going to leave it to John Brummett in our next segment to lay out a prediction for what happens next week. Senator Clark, Representative Gray, thank you both for being with us. Appreciate you.